In the pantheon of American automobiles, few vehicles embody such a striking duality as a Chevrolet Monte Carlo. When it first rolled onto showroom floors in 1970, it arrived as Chevrolet's elegant entry into the personal luxury car market, a smooth-riding, plush-appointed cruiser designed for comfort rather than competition. Yet, behind its refined exterior lurked an engineering platform that would, somewhat improbably, transform into one of the most dominant forces in NASCAR racing history. This is the story of an unexpected champion, a car that bridged two seemingly contradictory worlds. On weekends, it was the choice of businessmen, families, and everyday Americans seeking a touch of affordable luxury. On Sundays, modified versions of this same silhouette thundered around oval tracks at nearly 200 miles per hour, collecting checkered flags with remarkable consistency and becoming one of the winningest models in stock car racing history. The Monte Carlo's journey from boulevard cruiser to victory lane staple represents not just a triumph of engineering adaptability, but a fascinating chapter in American automotive culture where the line between showroom appeal and racing prowess blurred into something entirely unique. Throughout the decades, it would claim 396 NASCAR Cup Series race victories and power drivers to multiple championships, all while maintaining its identity as the quintessential American personal luxury coupe. This is how a car designed for comfort became a legend of speed, the complete history of how a luxury cruiser became an unstoppable NASCAR champion. The late 1960s represented a transitional period for the American automobile industry. The unchecked muscle car era was approaching its zenith, but another profitable segment was emerging: the personal luxury market. While Ford had enjoyed tremendous success with its Thunderbird, General Motors recognized an opportunity to offer its own interpretation of accessible luxury, one that combined the comforts expected in higher-end automobiles with pricing accessible to mid-class America. Chevrolet needed something to fill that personal luxury gap in their lineup. They had the Impala and Caprice for full-size luxury, the Camaro for performance, but nothing that directly competed with Ford's Thunderbird or the growing mid-sized luxury segment. The answer came in 1969 when Chevrolet announced the development of the Monte Carlo, a name after the glamorous Mediterranean resort city in Monaco. The concept was straightforward but effective. Take the existing A-body platform shared with the Chevelle, stretch the wheelbase slightly, add distinctive styling cues borrowed from more expensive vehicles, and create an upscale interior experience that spoke to comfort rather than performance. When the first generation Monte Carlo debuted for the 1970 model year, it made an immediate impression. Its distinctive styling featured a long hood, short deck proportions, and elegant lines that evoked more expensive luxury vehicles. Inside, plush interiors with simulated wood trim, high-quality upholstery, and a focus on noise reduction created an experience that felt more Cadillac than Chevrolet. The original marketing positioned the Monte Carlo as a personal luxury car for the Chevrolet customer. The advertisements emphasized comfort, style, and prestige, words not typically associated with cars that would later dominate stock car racing. The buying public responded enthusiastically. In its first year, Chevrolet sold over 130,000 Monte Carlos, a respectable figure that would grow substantially in subsequent years. The typical Monte Carlo customer was markedly different from the traditional NASCAR fan. They were often older, more affluent, and prioritized comfort and style over raw performance. Customers who purchased the 1972 Monte Carlo when new say they bought it because it was upscale without being unattainable. It had the long hood that made you feel like you were driving something special. Performance wasn't even on their radar. All they wanted was something comfortable for long drives that still turn heads in the company parking lot. This consumer perception of the Monte Carlo as a boulevard cruiser rather than a performance machine made its subsequent racing success all the more remarkable. As the first-generation Monte Carlo settled into the identity as a luxury car for the masses, few could have predicted that the same silhouette would soon become one of the most feared shapes in NASCAR competition. Beneath the Monte Carlo's luxury veneer lay technical foundations that would prove crucial to its racing success. While marked as a luxury vehicle, the Monte Carlo shared its fundamental architecture with performance-oriented models in the General Motors lineup, providing a robust platform that racing teams could effectively leverage. The first-generation Monte Carlo utilized Chevrolet's A-body platform, which it shared with the Chevelle, a model already establishing a performance reputation. This common architecture meant the Monte Carlo inherited several performance-friendly characteristics, including a front engine, rear-wheel drive layout, a sturdy frame, and compatibility with Chevrolet's range of small and big block V8 engines. The beauty of the Monte Carlo from an engineering perspective was that its luxury orientation didn't compromise its fundamental mechanical potential. The longer wheelbase actually improved high-speed stability compared to the Chevelle, while the basic suspension geometry could be readily modified for racing applications. The production Monte Carlo offered several engine options, ranging from the base 350 cubic inch small block V8 to more powerful 400 and 454 cubic inch big blocks. While these engines were tuned for smoothness and refinement in the production cars, their basic architecture provided an excellent foundation for racing development. Weight distribution proved particularly advantageous. The Monte Carlo's extended wheelbase and front-end design created a favorable balance that translated well to oval track racing. The longer front overhang, primarily a styling feature for the production car, inadvertently provided aerodynamic benefits and improved cooling capacity for racing engines operating at a sustained high RPMs. When GM engineers stripped away the luxury components and began developing the racing version, they discovered that the fundamental chassis balance was nearly ideal for oval racing. The weight was distributed in a way that promoted stability under braking and excellent traction off corners, two critical factors in NASCAR competition. Suspension components borrowed from GM's performance parts catalog could be easily adapted to the Monte Carlo platform, allowing teams to fine-tune handling characteristics while remaining within NASCAR's increasingly strict regulations. The basic AA arm, front suspension, and rear four-link design provided a familiar starting point for NASCAR engineers accustomed to working with American production cars. Another often overlooked technical advantage was the Monte Carlo's structural rigidity. As a luxury-oriented vehicle, the production Monte Carlo featured additional body reinforcements to reduce noise, vibration, and harshness, qualities valued by luxury car buyers. The same refinements provided racing teams with a more rigid foundation upon which to build, reducing flex under the extreme stresses of competition and improving overall handling predictability. The Monte Carlo's braking system, while designed for comfort in production form, utilized larger components than many comparable vehicles to accommodate the car's weight. This provided NASCAR teams with a solid foundation for the development of racing brake systems capable of withstanding the extreme temperatures and stresses of competition. By the time the first Monte Carlo appeared in NASCAR competition, teams had recognized that beneath its luxury car styling lay the bones of a potentially dominant race car. The combination of inherent chassis balance, structural rigidity, and compatibility with proven Chevrolet performance components meant that the transformation from showroom cruiser to track dominator, while still requiring substantial engineering effort, had a solid technical foundation upon which to build. As the Monte Carlo established itself in showrooms across America, NASCAR was undergoing significant transitions that would inadvertently set the stage for the luxury coupe's unlikely racing career. The early 1970s marked a critical juncture for stock car racing as regulatory changes and shifting manufacturer priorities reshaped the competitive landscape. NASCAR was moving away from the truly stock car era. Throughout the 1960s, manufacturers had been fielding special limited production models specifically designed for racing. But as the 1970s began, NASCAR started implementing rules that favored intermediate-sized cars and more standardized specifications. in 1971, NASCAR implemented a displacement limit of 429 cubic inches. That's 7 liters, effectively ending the era of the 426 Hemi and other oversized racing engines. Additionally, track speeds had reached concerning levels, promoting calls for the cars that emphasize handling and aerodynamics over raw horsepower, attributes that would eventually play to the Monte Carlo's strengths. Simultaneously, Detroit was facing new challenges. The impending emissions regulations, rising insurance rates for performance vehicles, and the looming fuel crisis were forcing manufacturers to reconsider their racing programs and the vehicles they chose to showcase on the track. For Chevrolet, these changes presented both a challenge and an opportunity. Their successful Chevelle race cars needed a successor, and the Monte Carlo, despite its luxury image, shared the same basic A-body platform and wheelbase. More importantly, its aerodynamic profile showed promising characteristics for high-speed oval racing. It might have seemed counterintuitive to take what was essentially a luxury car to the track. But when Chevy racing engineers looked at the Monte Carlo objectively, they saw racing potential. The long hood created a natural air dam effect. The fastback-style rear window helped with airflow, and the slightly longer wheelbase improved stability at high speeds. The decision to race the Monte Carlo wasn't universally embraced at first. NASCAR fans and competitors initially viewed the luxury cruiser with skepticism. Many racing fans quipped at the time, "They're bringing a yacht to a speedboat race." Even some within Chevrolet questioned whether racing their luxury offering might dilute its upscale image or confuse customers. However, those with vision recognized that NASCAR's success could actually enhance the Monte Carlo's appeal by adding a performance pedigree to its luxury credentials, a duality that would ultimately become the model's defining characteristic. As the 1971 NASCAR season approached, few recognized that the stage was set for one of the most successful racing programs in the sport's history. The luxury cruiser was about to shed its luxury image and reveal its unexpected racing soul. Converting a personal luxury car designed for comfort into a competitive NASCAR entry presented significant engineering challenges. While the Monte Carlo shared its basic architecture with the Chevelle, transforming it into a race-worthy machine required extensive modifications and creative problem-solving. The street Monte Carlo and the race version shared a distinct shape and not much else. Former Chevrolet engineers had a lot to rethink, starting from the suspension geometry, chassis rigidity, to weight distribution, essentially rebuilding the car from the ground up while maintaining that distinctive Monte Carlo profile. The initial racing conversion began with stripping the luxury appointments that made the production Monte Carlo appealing to customers. The plush interior, sound insulation, and comfort features were removed, reducing weight while making room for safety equipment. The chassis was reinforced with additional bracing to improve rigidity and handling at high speeds. But what initially appeared as a compromise, racing a car designed for luxury rather than performance, revealed unexpected advantages. The Monte Carlo's longer wheelbase compared to other NASCAR entries provided greater stability in corners. More significantly, its aerodynamic profile proved remarkably efficient on NASCAR's high-speed ovals. Wind tunnel testing showed aerodynamicists who worked with several Chevrolet teams something fascinating. The Monte Carlo's sloping nose and the relationship between the greenhouse and the trunk created natural downforce without excessive drag. They claimed they couldn't have designed a better aerodynamic package if they've started from scratch. When the first Monte Carlo NASCAR entries appeared at the Riverside Opener in 1971, the racing community's initial skepticism quickly gave way to concern as the car showed immediate promise. Bobby Allison captured the first win for the Monte Carlo at the Bowman Gray Stadium in North Carolina, a victory that would prove to be just the beginning of the model's success. As teams gained experience with the platform, they discovered additional advantages. The Monte Carlo's weight distribution proved ideal for oval racing, providing exceptional balance through corners. The car's inherent stability allowed drivers to carry more speed through the turns than many competitors, creating an advantage that would become increasingly apparent as the decade progressed. Engine development played a crucial role as well. While NASCAR's displacement limits affected all manufacturers equally, Chevrolet's small block V8 architecture provided an excellent foundation for reliable, powerful racing engines. When paired with the Monte Carlo's aerodynamic advantages, this created a formidable combination. By the end of its first full season of competition, the Monte Carlo had secured multiple victories and established itself as a legitimate contender. The luxury cruiser had completed the first phase of its transformation into a racing icon, shattering preconceptions about its capabilities and setting the stage for an era of dominance that few could have predicted. The beauty of the Monte Carlo's racing success was how completely it contradicted its showroom image. Here was this plush, comfortable car your uncle might drive to his accounting job, becoming a ferocious competitor on the track. It created this wonderful duality that no other NASCAR in history has quite matched. The transformation of the Monte Carlo from showroom model to NASCAR winner involved numerous engineering innovations that pushed the boundaries of what was possible within NASCAR's regulatory framework. As teams gained experience with the platform, they developed increasingly sophisticated approaches to extracting maximum performance from the luxury coupe's basic architecture. Aerodynamics quickly emerged as a critical area of focus. While the production Monte Carlo shape had proven surprisingly effective in initial competition, teams soon began exploring subtle modifications that could further enhance performance while remaining within NASCAR's increasingly strict templates. There was an art to working with NASCAR's inspection process. The rulebook specified certain dimensions and profiles, but within those parameters, there was room for creativity. Teams would spend countless hours in wind tunnels and on test tracks, finding those small advantages that could translate to hundreds of a second per lap. One key innovation involved a precise positioning of the body on the chassis. By adjusting the relationship between body and frame, a technique known as chassis offset, teams could improve aerodynamic efficiency and weight distribution simultaneously. The Monte Carlo's longer wheelbase and distinctive profile made it particularly responsive to these subtle adjustments. Suspension development represented another crucial area of innovation. While the basic components remained similar to their production counterparts, teams developed sophisticated methods for fine-tuning handling characteristics to suit different tracks and driving styles. The Monte Carlo gave us an excellent foundation, but the real magic happened in how we optimized the suspension geometry. Experts developed new approaches to controlling body roll, managing weight transfer under acceleration and braking, and maintaining optimal tire contact patches through different corner profiles. Engine development proceeded on parallel tracks, while adhering to NASCAR's displacement limits. Chevrolet and its teams continually refined their power plans for both increased output and improved reliability. Innovations in valve train components, combustion chamber design, and induction systems allowed the Monte Carlo engines to produce remarkable power while withstanding the punishing demands of NASCAR competition. Perhaps the most significant engineering innovation came in the form of integrated development approaches. Rather than treating the car systems as separate entities, successful teams began adopting holistic strategies that considered how aerodynamics, suspension, engine performance, and driver output worked harmoniously as a complete system. The teams that really maximized Monte Carlo's potential were the ones that understood the interdependence of all these factors. They recognized that a suspension change affected aerodynamic performance, which in turn influenced engine cooling, which impacted reliability and power output. The most successful programs were those that could model and optimize these relationships. This systems-based approach to race car development represented a significant evolution in NASCAR engineering, one that would influence the sport for decades to come. The Monte Carlo, with its unique combination of luxury car origins and racing success, became a platform for innovative thinking that pushed teams to develop increasingly sophisticated engineering methodologies. As regulations evolved through the 1970s and beyond, teams continuously adapted their approaches, finding new ways to optimize the Monte Carlo within changing constraints. This culture of innovation ensured that the model remained competitive across multiple generations and regulatory environments, contributing significantly to its remarkable longevity as a NASCAR platform. By the time the Monte Carlo had established itself as NASCAR's dominant force, the engineering that underpinned its race car bore increasingly little resemblance to its showroom counterpart. Yet the distinctive silhouette remained, maintaining that crucial visual connection between the luxury cruiser in the dealership and the race winner in the victory lane. The mid-1970s marked the beginning of the Monte Carlo's first golden era in NASCAR competition. What began as a promising racing program rapidly evolved into a dynasty that would reshape the competitive landscape of stock car racing for years to come. Central to this success were the drivers who championed the Monte Carlo on track. Cale Yarborough emerged as perhaps the most successful early proponent, partnering with car owner Junior Johnson to create one of the most dominant driver team combinations in NASCAR history. Driving the now iconic number 11 Holly Farms Monte Carlo, Yarborough achieved what was then considered impossible: 3 consecutive Winston Cup championships from 1976 to 1978. That Monte Carlo just suited my driving style perfectly, Yarborough would later recall. It was stable in the corners, strong on the straightaways, and consistent over long runs. Junior gave me great equipment, but there was something special about how that car handled on the speedways. Yarborough wasn't alone in finding success with the Monte Carlo. David Pearson, driving the famed number 21 Wood Brothers Mercury for most of the decade, often found his toughest competition coming from Monte Carlo drivers. Richard Childress, who would later become one of NASCAR's most successful team owners, began his driving career in a Monte Carlo, before eventually putting a young Dale Earnhardt behind the wheel of one. The Monte Carlo's growing dominance coincided with significant evolutions in the car itself. The 1973 model year brought substantial styling changes, with more pronounced colonnade styling and a larger, more formal roofline. While these changes were made for aesthetic and safety reasons in the production car, they inadvertently created aerodynamic challenges for the racing version. Chevrolet and its teams responded with ingenuity. Working within NASCAR's increasingly strict regulations, engineers found ways to maximize the new body style's performance potential. The formal roofline that appealed to luxury buyers was subtly reshaped within legal tolerances to improve airflow, while front-end designs were optimized to enhance cooling and aerodynamic efficiency. As NASCAR evolved through the 1970s, so too did the Monte Carlo's race cars. The introduction of the second-generation Monte Carlo for 1973 and subsequent refreshes required continuous development to maintain the model's competitive edge. Each iteration brought new challenges and opportunities, but the fundamental advantages of the platform remained consistent. The 1975 NASCAR season represented perhaps the zenith of the first-generation Monte Carlo's dominance. Chevrolet drivers captured 16 of 30 races that year, with the Monte Carlo establishing itself as the clear car of choice for top teams. This success created a virtuous cycle. More competitive teams chose the Monte Carlo, leading to more development resources, which in turn produced better race cars and more victories. As the decade progressed, the Monte Carlo became a fixture in victory lane. It was during this period that the disconnect between the car's showroom image and racing pedigree began to narrow. Chevrolet's marketing subtly shifted to incorporate the racing success into the Monte Carlo's identity, creating special editions like the Monte Carlo SS that nodded to its competition heritage while maintaining its luxury car credentials. By the end of the 1970s, what had once seemed an unlikely marriage, a personal luxury coupe competing in NASCAR's grueling oval races, had been transformed into one of the most successful racing programs in the sport's history. The Monte Carlo had not only proven itself capable of competing at NASCAR's highest level, it had redefined expectations for what a successful stock car could be. Behind the Monte Carlo's racing dominance stood numerous individuals whose vision, expertise, and determination transformed the luxury coupe into a NASCAR legend. From executives who championed the racing program to engineers who solved seemingly insurmountable technical challenges, the human element proved as crucial as many mechanical advantage. Vince Piggins, Chevrolet's product performance manager during these crucial early years, emerges as perhaps the most significant figure in the Monte Carlo's racing story. Having previously overseen the development of performance-oriented vehicles like the Camaro Z28, Piggins recognized the Monte Carlo's potential despite its luxury car origins. Vince had this remarkable ability to see racing potential where others couldn't, remembers former Chevrolet engineer Paul Van Valkenburg. When everyone else looked at the Monte Carlo and saw just a luxury car, he recognized a platform with tremendous racing potential. Without his advocacy inside Chevrolet, the Monte Carlo NASCAR program might never have happened. Equally important were the team owners who committed to the Monte Carlo platform. Junior Johnston's decision to field Monte Carlos for Cale Yarborough provided critical early validation, while Richard Childress Racing's long-term commitment to the model helped establish its dynasty status across multiple generations. Junior had this incredible intuition about what would work on the racetrack, notes former team manager Jimmy Haynes. When he committed to the Monte Carlo, other teams took notice because his judgment carried tremendous weight in the garage. Once the car started winning with him, everyone wanted a Monte Carlo. The engineers who transformed the production design into a race winner deserve particular recognition. Chevrolet's internal racing support, while often operating in semi-official capacity due to General Motors' periodic racing bans, provided crucial technical assistance that helped teams optimize their Monte Carlos within NASCAR's increasingly complex rule structure. Racing engine builders like Randy Dorton at Hendrick Motorsports and Lou LaRosa at Richard Childress Racing developed specialized power plants that maximize the Monte Carlo's performance potential. Their ability to extract exceptional power and reliability from NASCAR legal engines gave Monte Carlo teams a crucial edge in an increasingly competitive environment. Aerodynamicist Gary DeHart became a key figure in the Monte Carlo's later success, particularly during the model's 1990s resurgence. His detailed understanding of airflow dynamics and their application to oval track racing helped teams optimize their Monte Carlos within NASCAR's template system, finding advantages that competitors often struggled to match. Gary understood the subtleties of stock car aerodynamics better than anyone else, explains former crew chief Ray Everham. He could look at airflow patterns and pressure distributions and translate that into practical adjustments that made our Monte Carlos faster without violating NASCAR's increasingly strict rules. Crew chiefs like Everham, Chad Noss, and Dale Inman played crucial roles in translating the Monte Carlo's potential into on-track performance. Their race strategy, car setup expertise, and ability to adapt to changing track conditions maximized the platform's advantages while minimizing its occasional limitations. Perhaps most importantly, the drivers who piloted Monte Carlos brought diverse skills that demonstrated the car's versatility. From Yarborough's aggressive style to Earnhardt's intimidating presence to Gordon's technical precision, successful Monte Carlo drivers represented different approaches to racing that the platform could accommodate equally well. What's amazing about the Monte Carlo was how it could be adapted to such different driving styles. Some cars favor a particular approach, but the Monte Carlo could be set up to work for drivers with completely different techniques. This versatility was a huge part of its success across different eras. The collective efforts of these individuals, executives, team owners, engineers, crew chiefs, and drivers transformed what began as an improbable racing program into one of NASCAR's most successful dynasties. Their ability to recognize potential, overcome challenges, and continuously evolve the platform ensured that the Monte Carlo remained competitive across multiple generations and regulatory environments. The dawn of the 1980s brought significant challenges to both the automotive industry and NASCAR. The lingering effects of the energy crisis, stricter emission standards, and changing consumer preferences led to dramatic design changes across all domestic manufacturers. For the Monte Carlo, this meant a complete redesign that prioritized efficiency and aerodynamics over the traditional long hood, short deck proportions that had defined its first two generations. The 1978 introduction of the downsized third-generation Monte Carlo represented perhaps the model's most dramatic transformation to date. Shorter, lighter, and more angular than its predecessors, the new design reflected General Motors' corporate-wide downsizing initiative. While this created a more efficient consumer product, it initially presented significant challenges for NASCAR competition. The new Monte Carlo was a completely different animal aerodynamically, with its shorter wheelbase and more uptight greenhouse, which created handling characteristics that required engineers to essentially start from scratch in developing the race version. This generational shift coincided with increasing competition from Ford, whose Thunderbird was undergoing its own transformation in a more aerodynamic shape better suited for NASCAR's high-speed ovals. The result was a period of intense development as manufacturers sought every possible advantage within NASCAR's regulatory framework. NASCAR itself was evolving during this period, implementing stricter rules regarding the relationship between production vehicles and their racing counterparts. These changes were intended to maintain the stock in stock car racing, but they created additional hurdles for teams as they adapted to new Monte Carlo platforms. The early 1980s represented a period of transition for the Monte Carlo in NASCAR, with the model experiencing inconsistent results as teams adapted to the new generation. However, this adversity ultimately led to one of the most innovative chapters in the car's racing history, the development of the Monte Carlo SS Aero Coupe. Recognizing that the standard Monte Carlo's upright rear window created aerodynamic drag at high speeds, Chevrolet developed a limited production variant specifically designed to improve NASCAR performance. The SS Aero Coupe featured a dramatically sloped rear window that significantly reduced drag while improving high-speed stability. The Aero Coupe was a purpose-built NASCAR homologation special, and Chevrolet produced just enough units for street sale to qualify the design for competition. It was one of the clearest examples of how NASCAR's success had become integral to the Monte Carlo's identity. With the Aero Coupe, the Monte Carlo regained its competitive edge. Dale Earnhardt, who had emerged as NASCAR's most intimidating driver, found particular success with the platform. Driving for Richard Childress Racing, Earnhardt's black No. 3 Monte Carlo became one of the most recognizable race cars in America, helping cement both the driver's legacy and the Monte Carlo's racing pedigree. Despite regulatory challenges and intense competition, the Monte Carlo remained a formidable presence in NASCAR throughout the 1980s. While it may not have dominated to the same degree as in the previous decade, its continued competitiveness through a period of significant change demonstrated the fundamental soundness of the platform and the commitment of Chevrolet to maintaining its NASCAR legacy. By the decade's end, the Monte Carlo had weathered perhaps its most challenging period while establishing the foundation for a remarkable resurgence that would emerge in the years to come. The lessons learned during its transitional era, adaptability, innovation, and perseverance, would prove invaluable as the model entered its second golden age. The Monte Carlo's NASCAR success fundamentally altered how Chevrolet marketed and positioned the model throughout its production run. What began as a relatively traditional approach to promoting a personal luxury car evolved into a sophisticated strategy that leveraged racing heritage while maintaining the vehicle's upscale credentials. Early Monte Carlo marketing materials from 1970 to 1972 made virtually no mention of performance or racing potential. Advertisements emphasized comfort, styling, and value, positioning the model as an accessible luxury car rather than a performance vehicle. Television spots showed the Monte Carlo cruising scenic highways or parked in front of upscale venues, reinforcing its identity as a sophisticated choice for discerning customers. The initial marketing strategy deliberately avoided performance messaging. Chevrolet had the Camaro and Corvette for performance-minded customers. The Monte Carlo was positioned as their entry into the personal luxury segment, competing primarily on comfort, style, and value, rather than speed or handling. As the Monte Carlo began accumulating NASCAR victories in the early 1970s, Chevrolet's marketing approach underwent a subtle but significant evolution. Rather than pivoting entirely to performance messaging, which might have confused consumers or undermined the model's luxury positioning, Chevrolet adopted a dual-track strategy that maintained the Monte Carlo's upscale image, while gradually incorporating references to its racing success. This approach became particularly evident in print advertising, where luxury-focused national campaigns were complemented by more performance-oriented regional advertisements in NASCAR stronghold markets across the Southeast. These regional ads often featured NASCAR imagery or references to specific race victories, creating a connection between showroom models and their racing counterparts. The introduction of performance-oriented variants like the Monte Carlo SS further bridged the gap between the model's dual identities. While still featuring the luxury appointments expected in a Monte Carlo, these variants incorporated subtle styling cues and mechanical enhancements that nodded to the model's racing success without compromising its primary luxury mission. Chevrolet executed a remarkably sophisticated strategy with the Monte Carlo. Rather than allowing its NASCAR success to overshadow its luxury positioning, they used racing victories to create a performance halo that enhanced rather than redefined the model's fundamental appeal. Few vehicles have successfully straddled these different market segments so effectively. Television advertising during the 1980s and 1990s increasingly referenced the Monte Carlo's racing heritage, often featuring NASCAR visuals or driver endorsements. However, these performance messages were consistently balanced with traditional luxury car imagery, maintaining the model's dual appeal to both racing enthusiasts and customers seeking comfortable, stylish transportation. The relationship between showroom models and their racing counterparts became increasingly synergistic as the Monte Carlo's production run continued. NASCAR's success created brand awareness and positive associations that attracted customers to dealerships, while strong retail sales provided the financial justification for continued racing support. This virtuous cycle helped maintain the Monte Carlo's position in both contexts longer than might otherwise have been possible. Perhaps the clearest indication of how thoroughly NASCAR's success influenced the Monte Carlo's identity came in the form of special editions and commemorative models. From Dale Earnhardt's Signature Series Monte Carlos to Jeff Gordon's special editions, these vehicles directly leveraged NASCAR connections to create distinctive offerings that commanded premium prices while reinforcing the model's racing heritage. By the time the Monte Carlo ended production in 2007, its marketing identity had evolved substantially from the pure luxury positioning of its introduction. The final generations were promoted as sophisticated performance coupes with authentic racing heritage, a positioning that would have seemed incongruous in 1970, but had become natural through decades of NASCAR success. This evolution in marketing strategy represents one of the most successful examples of leveraging motorsport success to enhance rather than redefine a vehicle's market positioning. Rather than allowing its NASCAR victories to transform the Monte Carlo into a pure performance car, Chevy maintained its luxury credentials while adding a racing dimension that enriched rather than replaced its original identity. This on-track success created a powerful marketing narrative that Chevrolet leveraged effectively. The Monte Carlo SS became positioned as a performance-oriented personal luxury car, with advertising and special editions highlighting the NASCAR connection. The production car and race car had developed a symbiotic relationship that benefited both, creating a powerful brand identity that resonated with customers and race fans alike. The statistics from this era are particularly striking when considering the level of competition. Ford and Pontiac had developed their own purpose-built NASCAR entries with the Thunderbird, later replaced by the Taurus and Grand Prix respectively. Yet, the Monte Carlo consistently outperformed both on tracks ranging from the high-banked superspeeds of Daytona and Talladega to tight short tracks like Martinsville and Bristol. What made the 1990s Monte Carlo so special was its versatility. It wasn't just good at one type of track. It was competitive everywhere. That's incredibly difficult to achieve within NASCAR's rule structure, and it speaks to the fundamental soundness of the design. This versatility allowed Chevrolet teams to adopt diverse strategic approaches. While Earnhardt and Childress Racing emphasized consistency and calculated aggression, Gordon and Hendrick Motorsports focused on qualifying speed and leading from the front. Both approaches proved successful, demonstrating the Monte Carlo's adaptability to different racing philosophies. The Monte Carlo's 1990s dominance stemmed partially from Chevrolet's pioneering approach to aerodynamic development. While competitors were still relying heavily on track testing, Chevrolet engineers had begun extensive wind tunnel programs that revolutionized how NASCAR vehicles were designed and refined. Experts were spending 40 to 50 hours per month in the wind tunnel by 1994. This was unprecedented at the time, but it allowed them to make incremental improvements that added up to significant advantages on the track. Teams could test theories without the variables of driver input or changing track conditions. This methodical approach paid dividends, particularly in the management of aerodynamic balance across different speeds and attitudes. The Monte Carlo's distinctive nose and rear deck configuration allowed teams to achieve remarkable stability in traffic, a critical advantage during the era's frequent pack racing at superspeedways. Ray Evernham, Gordon's crew chief during his championship seasons, notes that the Monte Carlo's aerodynamic package gave teams unique tuning options. What set the Monte Carlo apart was how predictably it responded to small changes. We could add a quarter-inch spoiler or make a minor adjustment and know exactly how the car would react. That predictability gave crew chief tremendous confidence in making race day decisions. Nowhere was the Monte Carlo's technical superiority more evident than at NASCAR's showcase venues, Daytona and Talladega. Despite rules designed to equalize competition at these tracks, Monte Carlo drivers secured 22 of 30 possible superspeedway victories between 1994 and 1998. This dominance stemmed from subtle aerodynamic advantages that became apparent only in the unique conditions of superspeedway drafting. The Monte Carlo's body shape created what engineers called a clean wake, an air pattern behind the car that allowed following vehicles to maintain greater momentum when drafting. This not only made the Monte Carlo an effective leader, but also a preferred drafting partner, giving Chevrolet drivers strategic advantages in forming alliances during races. Ford and Pontiac teams complained constantly about our supposed advantages, recalls team owner Rick Hendrick. But NASCAR's inspection process was incredibly thorough. Our advantage wasn't about bending the rules. It was about understanding the science of airflow better than our competitors. This technical edge translated into remarkable statistics. During the 1995 season, Monte Carlo drivers led 70% of all laps in superspeedways and qualified in the top 5 positions for each superspeedway event. Such overwhelming performance eventually led NASCAR to institute new inspection procedures specifically targeting the Monte Carlo's aerodynamic profile, a backhanded compliment to Chevrolet's engineering prowess. The Monte Carlo's dominance extended beyond just Earnhardt and Gordon. Drivers like Terry Labonte, Sterling Martin, and Bobby Labonte all found success with the platform, spreading wins across multiple teams and further cementing the Monte Carlo's reputation as NASCAR's premier race car. By the close of the 1990s, the Monte Carlo not only had reclaimed its NASCAR throne, but had established a legacy of success that transcended any single era. From luxury cruiser to NASCAR icon, its evolution is now complete, setting the stage for its final chapter in the sport it had come to define. As NASCAR entered the 21st century, the Chevrolet Monte Carlo continued its winning ways while facing new challenges from both competitors and changing regulatory frameworks. This final chapter in the model's racing history would be defined by adaptation, continued excellence, and the emergence of new stars who would add to its legendary status. The dawn of the new millennia brought significant changes to NASCAR's competitive landscape. In 2000, NASCAR introduced its first version of the common template rule, which standardized body dimensions across all manufacturers in an effort to level the playing field and reduce the aerodynamic advantages that had defined the previous decade. The common template era fundamentally changed how manufacturers approach NASCAR, explains motorsports consultant Dave Wilson. No longer could you gain significant advantages through body shape alone. Success now depended on extracting the absolute maximum from increasingly similar packages. This regulatory shift coincided with the introduction of the new fifth-generation Monte Carlo for the 2000 NASCAR season. The timing created unique challenges for Chevrolet's engineering team, who had to develop the new racing package while adapting to NASCAR's evolving technical framework. "We essentially had to redesign the car twice," explains former Chevrolet racing director Herb Fischel. "First, to optimize the new Monte Carlo body style for competition. Then again, to ensure it conformed to the emerging common template regulations. It was like hitting a moving target." Despite these dual challenges, Chevrolet's engineering team delivered a race car that maintained much of the previous generation's performance edge while accommodating the new regulations. The 2000 Monte Carlo race car featured more pronounced contours and an angled greenhouse that created what many consider the most visually distinctive NASCAR Monte Carlo. This redesign process highlighted a growing philosophical divide within NASCAR. While the sanctioning body pushed for greater standardization in the name of competitive balance, manufacturers sought to maintain visual and technical distinctions that supported their marketing objectives. The Monte Carlo became the focal point of this tension, with competitors claiming its distinctive body shape provided unfair advantages despite conforming to the letter of NASCAR's regulation. Jimmy Johnson emerged as the model's new standard bearer, piloting his number 48 Lowe's Monte Carlo to historic success with Hendrick Motorsports. Beginning in 2006, Johnson would claim 5 consecutive championships, an unprecedented achievement that coincided with the Monte Carlo's final years of NASCAR competition. Even with the more sophisticated standardized bodies, there was still something special about how the Monte Carlo responded to fine-tuning, notes Chad Noss, Johnson's crew chief during his championship run. "We could make small adjustments that translated to meaningful performance gains in ways that weren't always possible with other platforms." This responsiveness to adjustment stemmed from fundamental characteristics that persisted despite the standardization efforts. The Monte Carlo's center of gravity, weight distribution, and suspension geometry created a baseline handling package that proved exceptionally adaptable to different track configurations and driving styles. Johnson's unprecedented championship streak showcased these attributes. The number 48 team excelled on every track type in the NASCAR schedule, from half-mile short tracks to 2.5-mile superspeedways, demonstrating versatility that few competitors could match. This adaptability became increasingly valuable as NASCAR expanded its playoff format, requiring teams to excel across diverse track layouts during the championship run. What set Jimmy and Chad apart wasn't just raw speed, observes former NASCAR competition director Rob Pemberton. It was their ability to adapt the Monte Carlo package to changing conditions throughout a race weekend. They could be struggling in practice, make subtle adjustments, and suddenly become the car to beat on Sunday. That flexibility was built into the Monte Carlo's DNA. The 2000s Monte Carlo program also marked a significant evolution in how technology transferred between Chevrolet's racing and production activities. While earlier generations had featured limited technical crossover, the 5th and 6th generation Monte Carlos benefited from unprecedented integration between racing development and production engineering. We established what we called the racing to production pipeline in 2002, explains former GM Performance Division Director Mark Roos. Aerodynamic lessons from the NASCAR program directly influenced production car design, while production manufacturing techniques helped us build more consistent race cars. This bi-directional flow of technology and expertise created tangible benefits for both programs. NASCAR engineers gained access to GM's computational fluid dynamics resources, previously reserved for production vehicles, while production engineers incorporated racing-derived knowledge about high-speed stability into standard Monte Carlo models. This connection extended to marketing as well, with Chevrolet introducing several racing-inspired Monte Carlo SS models that featured styling cues and performance enhancements drawn directly from the NASCAR program. These limited edition vehicles help maintain the Monte Carlo's performance image, despite the broader market shift toward front-wheel drive platforms. In 2004, NASCAR introduced the Car of Tomorrow initiative, signaling the beginning of the end for manufacturer-specific body designs. This program, which would be fully implemented by 2008, aimed to further standardize NASCAR vehicles with an emphasis on safety, competitive balance, and cost containment. As the industry prepared for this transition, the Monte Carlo enjoyed a final surge of success. In addition to Johnson's dominance, drivers like Kevin Harvick, Jeff Burton, and young Kyle Busch all found victory with the platform, adding to its already impressive win total. This late career success allowed the Monte Carlo to achieve a rare distinction in motorsports, a competitive exit. Unlike many racing platforms that faded into obsolescence before retirement, the Monte Carlo remained a championship-winning design until its final year, securing 23 victories in its last 2 years of NASCAR competition. The 2006 season would prove bittersweet for the Monte Carlo legacy. While Johnson secured his first championship in the model, Chevrolet announced that 2007 would be the final year for the Monte Carlo nameplate, both in showrooms and on the track. The following year, the model would be replaced by the Impala SS in NASCAR competition, ending an era that had spanned more than 3 decades. The decision to retire the Monte Carlo wasn't taken lightly, recalls then GM Racing Director Mark Kent. But with production ending, it made sense to align our NASCAR presence with a continuing model. That said, there was genuine emotion throughout the organization when we announced the change. This wasn't just another product cycle. It was the end of a racing legacy. When the checkered flag fell on the Monte Carlo's final NASCAR race in 2007, the model had accumulated a remarkable 396 victories in the Cup Series, more than any other model in NASCAR's modern era. From its unlikely beginning as a luxury cruiser to its final race as a purpose-built stock car, the Monte Carlo had evolved to meet each challenge while maintaining its winning tradition. The Monte Carlo's NASCAR success transcended sport, becoming a cultural touchstone that influenced everything from automotive design to popular entertainment. The distinctive silhouette of NASCAR Monte Carlos appeared in films, television shows, video games, and merchandise, creating a visual shorthand for American motorsport that resonated far beyond dedicated racing fans. This cultural penetration helped NASCAR itself transition from regional sport to national phenomenon during the Monte Carlo's competitive lifetime. As NASCAR expanded to new markets and broadcast platforms throughout the 1980s and 90s, the Monte Carlo's distinctive presence provided visual continuity that helped new fans connect with the sport. The Monte Carlo's racing legacy isn't just about statistics, though those are certainly impressive, reflects NASCAR Hall of Fame member Richard Childress. It's about how a car that was never designed for racing became one of the sport's most successful platforms through engineering excellence, driver talent, and organizational commitment. That's what makes its story so unique in motorsports history. Beyond the numbers, the Monte Carlo's enduring legacy can be seen in how it transformed the relationship between showroom models and their racing counterparts. What began as a tenuous connection between a luxury car and its racing namesake evolved into a sophisticated brand strategy that benefited both the competition program and its retail sales. In the years following its retirement from competition, the Monte Carlo has been embraced by the collector community, with racing-inspired models commanding premium prices. The connection between the car's racing heritage and its customer appeal remains strong, a testament to how thoroughly the model's NASCAR success permeated its identity. Perhaps the most fitting tribute to the Monte Carlo's racing legacy came in 2018, when Chevrolet introduced a new Camaro ZL1 NASCAR Series car. In describing the new model's development, Chevrolet executives repeatedly referenced the Monte Carlo program as the standard against which all racing efforts would be measured, a testament to the lasting impact of the luxury car that became a NASCAR legend. The story of the Chevrolet Monte Carlo in NASCAR represents one of the most remarkable chapters in American motorsports history, a narrative that defies conventional wisdom about what makes a successful race car. From its origins as a personal luxury coupe designed for comfort rather than competition, the Monte Carlo evolved into one of the most dominant platforms in NASCAR history, redefining perceptions of what a stock car could be and how it could connect with the public. The Monte Carlo's racing success, 396 Cup Series victories, numerous championships across multiple decades, and a roster of legendary drivers from Yarborough to Earnhardt to Gordon to Johnson tells only part of the story. Equally significant was how this success transformed the car's identity and market positioning, creating a unique duality that no other model has quite matched. The Monte Carlo's racing story ultimately transcends statistics and championships. It represents the possibility of finding unexpected greatness by looking beyond conventional wisdom and recognizing potential where others see limitations. In that sense, the luxury cruiser that became a NASCAR legend offers a powerful metaphor for success in any endeavor. Sometimes, greatness emerges from the most unlikely places.